Hello and welcome to Clipping In. It's Wednesday the 28th of May and I'm starting today's video at Walton Moor. You can see the monument there behind me. You might remember a video in March that I did loosely based around the Battle of Walton Moor in 1643. I put a clickable link to that up there. Today's video is not a direct sequel as such, but it follows on from all the turmoil of those events, of the various civil wars, the War of the Three Kingdoms, the regicide, the Protectorate, the Commonwealth, and ultimately the Restoration in the form of Charles II. Today we're going to have a look at the Farnley Woods plot of 1663, a tale of rebellion and betrayal. Our story begins in 1663, 3 years after the restoration of Charles II, and the chaos that followed the death of Oliver Cromwell, military forces clashing with parliamentary forces. That was ultimately resolved by more military force when General Monk, who was the governor, controller, martial law overseer of Scotland, came down into England, down to Parliament, and told them how it was going to be, and that involved bringing Charles II back from his court in exile in France. So the restoration left a lot of people very unhappy because Charles laid down various conditions, and in many respects it was like turning the clock back to the 1640s and the conditions that his father expected. There was a lot of control imposed over religious worship. The Book of Common Prayer was brought back. Nonconformists were certainly persecuted. It became an awful lot harder to be a practicing Presbyterian. And all over the country there were minor rebellions and uprisings, almost straight from 1660, 1661. And the north of England in particular, there were several uprisings and rebellions. And so this is taking us towards our 1663 now, when the northern elements were seriously plotting an uprising to overthrow the royalists in York, in Leeds, in Wakefield, and there were arrangements made throughout the summer and the autumn of 1663 to rise up, take Leeds and so on. And one of the agreed meeting places prior to the uprising was going to be Farnley Woods, handily placed for both Leeds and Wakefield. Well, sorry to break the narrative here, I've been past this 2 or 3 times, but according to the map, this is a bridleway with that handily placed boulder there. I'm not sure about this, to be honest, and I think I will take a different route. It looked nice on the OS map at least, but what I'm hoping to do at some point is gain height and show you where Farnley Wood used to be and how it overlooked the city of Leeds, and how traditionally the southern entry points into Leeds, how it would open them up for a potential uprising. But I'll find a different way. I just didn't like the look of that track. It's borders onto a landfill site as well, so it looked as if the surface was a mixture of mud, debris, broken glass. So even if I'd lifted my bike over that gate, I dread to think what the actual cycling was like. So now I'm climbing away up Gelderd Road back towards Gildersham. You can appreciate that 17th century at Farnley Wood was enormous, and it spread from Farnley Wood, the edge of Gildersham, all the way over to Beeston. You can see from some of the names on the map where it says Royd. In medieval English, or certainly West Yorkshire, West Riding English, anywhere you see Royd, you're looking at a small settlement or a farm that's been cleared out of woodland. So you'll get Mytham Royd in Calderdale. Go back to medieval times, all the main pack horse routes used to sit at about 1,000 feet, and you'd only drop into the wooded, swampy valleys to cross over, and then you'd regain height and go on the other side of the valley. And that's the case when you look at Hebden Bridge, Mytham Royd, Sowerby Bridge. They all fit that pattern. Gildersham again. Gildersham was the home of one of the chief plotters in the Farnley Wood plot. I think his name was Joshua Greathead. The other one came from Morley, a Captain Oates. You just get an impression that leaving Gildersham now and dropping back towards Farnley, before the clearance, before massive expansion of Leeds and the growth of these suburbs, it would have been quite remote, high-lying, relatively speaking, and quite remote. Now it looks like I've been able to pick up the top side of that track that I didn't fancy from Gelderd Road. I'm not sure how far I'll follow this, but hopefully it'll be enough to get a view opening up. It's got bridleway status, so I know I'm all right. Hopefully give us an idea. Farnley Wood Farm. Private property keep out. You never know. No vehicles. Is this a vehicle? Oh dear, I didn't expect it would be as interesting and rough as this. That looks narrow. For a bridleway, doesn't it? You'll see what I mean. So this will do for now, I think. Where we're on the slopes of what would have been Farnley Wood, we've got quite a good view into Leeds City centre. There's the Leeds University Parkinson building in white tower, what we've talked about before, the skyscraper district. And then panning roughly that direction is Leeds, what you call Inner Ring Road, and the M621. You can actually see the traffic on the M621 there. And that white building down there with the red van just passing, that's more or less where I looked at this bridleway at the bottom and just didn't fancy it. It was all broken glass and crunched up. But, you know, you get the impression that when all this was forested, rather than just these isolated little copse, and looking in that direction, that was Gildersham up on the hill. This would have been quite a remote place, and the plotters, I think it was sometime in October, agreed to meet here. But this is the concluding part of the story. The Gildersham plotter was a double agent, effectively, and he more or less acted as whatever the 17th century version of entrapment would be, to lure ex-soldiers, disaffected farmers, religious nonconformists, to lure them out, get them to agree to an uprising, and then blew the whistle on them. And many of them were arrested in advance of the rendezvous here. They never actually got to meet here. They were whisked away in the middle of the night. The ones who met here, there weren't many of them in the end, and it was supposedly pouring with rain, and they agreed to do nothing for the immediate term. And unfortunately, names went in books, and so many of them were executed in the most brutal hanging, drawing and quartering way, which was reserved for traitors. So it's a terrible end. It didn't finish the rebellious nature of this area. The nonconformists and the parliamentarian supporters kept going until ultimately the royalist government had to double or triple the size of the garrison in Leeds to be able to put down rebellions at a moment's notice. But interesting tale, interesting location. I wouldn't necessarily come back here. It's not exactly been a ride that flows, but makes a change on an easy day. So I'm retracing now back on that section where it said no vehicles, but the OS map has it clearly marked as a bridleway, so we're fine. And that's going to take me back towards New Farnley. Funnily enough, my parents used to live in New Farnley. I was 1 year away from being born as a Leeds man. What a narrow escape. Metropolis. Twiddling away on the road up to Tong, long hill. And been resurfaced in the last 10 days or so since I was around here. I've had a few pepper rings from loose tarmac, or loose chipping, shall we say. So it hasn't settled yet. There's still a few little bullets to watch out for. So it's always a good move. I mean, I wear glasses when I'm cycling because they're prescription glasses, but you know, even without, for when you think of all the potential eye trauma, get those big sunglasses on. The 80s are back. Another little interesting view here. We've got Tong Church, and the hill that I came up from Farnley sort of goes in that diagonal direction. And again, once more, you can see Parkinson Building and some of the skyscrapers. And the trees there, why I've stopped here, that's the what I would call the top side of Cockersdale Woods, and that could be one of the few major sort of remaining areas, wooded areas from, you know, ye olden days. This is the road heading into Dridlington and Adwalton. Oh, there's the Pennines opening up again. We've had a few spots of rain, but overall the weather's been pretty good. Climbing up from the former Oakenshaw Cross back up over the Spen Valley Greenway soon. I think this has been an interesting kind of ride, and it makes for a very good contrast with some of its neighbours on the channel, both in terms of style of riding, location, equipment too. I'm not even wearing a cycling jersey, which I found a little bit unusual. I realise how often I resort to my rear pockets on the jersey, and I don't have them on this rugby shirt. But apart from that, it's interesting to switch approaches. I mean, I admit that when I was racing, training, I wouldn't have entertained a ride like this. Maybe November, December, but there just wouldn't be a place for it when you're on a tight program, because it's not easy enough to be a recovery day, but it's not specific and it doesn't flow. But now that those days have gone, I can enjoy the bike in so many different ways, and I think that applies to a lot of us. This is what I was trying to get to. You can enjoy cycling in so many ways. You can do the aerodynamic stuff and the heart rate, power, reps of this, zone of that. You can do that approach, but then, providing you've got enough time, you can have a complete switch and do this kind of thing, which I've often described as like rambling on a bike. Yes, so from this Woolworths Pick and Mix approved cycle outing, it's signing off time, and I think it just goes to demonstrate how broad a church cycling can be, and all the different aspects of cycling that you can enjoy. So I'll say goodbye for now and see you very soon back out in the Yorkshire countryside. Bye bye.